What's up, everybody? Welcome to Mongols. I am Mike Sparks. Joining me for this one is Steve Mattiace and Josh Brokaw. We are going to talk all about how the Hounds pulled it off and got a 2-0 win over El Paso to lock up their spot in the playoffs. Let's go! Hit it, Josh. Yeah. I feel like this, like you opening the can has become almost like a guitar riff or like a drum solo. Like it's just, I look forward to it when you come in here and it's just like, take it away, Josh. Man.
That one had a nice little fizz sound at the end. That was
that's how you can tell it's soda.
So what is the big victory beverage tonight?
Oh, it's a little Croy. I'm too tired. I was like, I'm not drinking a beer this late. I'm good.
That's funny. Gentlemen, we will get into the game and sort of all of the fallout, positive fallout from the game, basically what we've learned as a result of all of the teams playing their final game of the season. But first, we're in the world with Steve Mattiace this week. Steve, tell us about your adventure.
Nowhere. I didn't do anything this weekend, really.
Yeah.
I had plans to go hiking today, and the person I was going to go with got COVID. Started getting sick on Friday, and then took a COVID test today and was positive. So, so kind of knew yesterday that I wasn't going hiking or anything. Kind of nice to just have a low-key weekend, honestly. Didn't have a lot going on yesterday. Didn't have much going on today. So the game was basically it. So the biggest thing I did was tailgate and watch the Hounds.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Sounds like a good weekend. Joshua, how was your weekend?
Good. Actually, today we went to Liz and I, and with Steel Army President Ariana, went to Trunk or Treat down at Highmark Stadium in the parking lot. They had a Trunk or Treat event. So all the mascots from all the different sports teams were there. A whole bunch of other like businesses and that kind of stuff set up trick or treating in the trunks, and yeah, lots of kids came rolling in, and they also had like tailgate zone set up still, so they had the fuzzy ball soccer ball that you can kick into the target and all that kind of stuff, and it was a lot of fun. And then while I was there, I realized there was an Open Cup match going on, qualifier. So went ahead and like snuck in there and watched a little bit of Open Cup, qualifying action. Unfortunately, Pittsburgh Dynamo lost to the New York team. I can't remember what team that is, but they were from New York. 1-0, and I think it was like 90 plus 3 minute goal from New York to get the win. So yep, but overall though, it was fun. It was cool to see everyone and watching the little kids freak out over ammo and all the other mascots. That was a lot of fun.
Yeah, I just figured out why it's called Trunk or Treat. Like, I've never given it any thought, and as somebody who doesn't have kids, like, I've never been to one, but it's because you're there giving candy out of the trunk of your car. I've heard it, had no idea.
I have no words. I don't know. I thought it was in the name. It was one of those situations
where... I'm taking away your most interesting man in the world label that I gave you last time. It's over. You got to earn it back now.
No adventures, and I just
no adventures. No, yeah, that's a bummer. Yeah, yesterday I was hoping to get back in time to get to the game. I took Ollie, my oldest, to go visit Westminster to go check that out. I've never been to the college. He had applied and got in, so we were like, well, we should probably go check it out so you know like what you're weighing it up against. Really cool school. It's small, like 1,100 people, but the buildings seem like they've been there forever. I think it's been around since the 1800s. Just it was a really, really cool space. So we'll see what happens. But we basically did a tour, and then like we just decided to hang out for the rest of the day there. They have a big lake and like cool stuff to check out. So it's a good time. And then yeah, just get some projects done today around the house. Started planning for sort of all of the content that we want to put together this week as the Hounds get ready for the playoffs game on Saturday, which we will get to in a second. Guys, anything else before we dive into this game here and get into the details?
That's all I got.
Okay, let's do it. So, as we mentioned in the intro, obviously, if you're listening to this, you know what happened. The Hounds beat El Paso 2-0. There's lots to talk about outside of the game. I figure let's touch on some of that stuff first, because it's sort of the fun stuff. The first thing is, for those of you who didn't see, Josh, you might have more details on who exactly this was. Josh or Steve, I was not there, obviously. But the Eric Dick in a box was fantastic on so many levels. Do one of you want to sort of tell the story behind this, or at least just explain what it is that I'm talking about here?
If you know the sketch from Saturday Night Live, or is it the Lonely Island Boys? I think that's who did it. That whole sketch, basically, as soon as we realized it was like going to be Halloween-ish, like our last game, some people dressed up. A couple of guys got it. Like we have to do Eric Dick in a box. Like you just got to do it. So, did a fantastic job with the costumes, and just had inside the box was a picture of Eric Dick. And I think my favorite was seeing the photo with them with Eric Dick after the game and him retweeting, just unreal.
Yes,
that image.
Yeah, I was least prepared for that out of everything last night, and when I saw it, I literally was just like rolling on the ground because it was so funny. But it was a great segue into the fact that Eric Dick got yet another shutout. We had said that he had needed to give up 7 goals to tie Danny Vitiello for the Golden Glove. He gave up none, and he won the Golden Glove, as well as the Steel Army Player of the Year, which we'll talk about in a second. Completely ironically won the Golden Glove with a 0.69 goals against average, which like you can't even write. You put that with the Eric Dick in a box, and like it just... there's the season right there. So, Josh, do you want to talk at all about, Eric Dick getting Steel Army Player of the Year at all?
He ran away with it this year. As soon as voting started, I think we all kind of knew, like just looking at like who's been a standout player this season. I think Eric Dick was kind of the obvious choice that was going to probably run away with it, and he absolutely did. Not saying he didn't deserve to run away with it. I think he definitely did. And yeah, so as soon as voting opened up, he took a lead pretty early and just kept on making that lead larger and larger. It was funny when we actually did the award. I was like watching the end of so usually what we do is let the players go through and like clap everyone's hand in the Steel Army section in the Paul Child stand, and then like grab a player. Usually it's for a victory selfie. Tell them like, hey, like wait, don't go with the rest of the team. Like stay here. So I, wrangled Eric, made sure he knew to stay, and then he was like, what? We're doing victory selfie? It's like, no, giving you an award. He's like, wait, what? He was completely... I don't even think he knew anything about the actual award that we do every year. So he was just standing there watching Ariana do the speech about like, what the Steel Army Award is and that kind of stuff on the Jumbotron. And then he was just like clapping like, all right, cool, I got it. And it's like, no, there's an actual award. Like, here's a trophy and like a scarf. And he's like, oh crap, awesome. So right over there, got the pictures and all that kind of stuff. It was great. And then afterwards, it cracked me up. They always have, the signings. The kids go get stuff signed from the players. And Eric Dick's line for people wanting stuff signed was giant. He was out there the whole time. Like everyone, all the other players, because there was also a mini concert of Mini Kiss after the game.
We'll get to that.
Yeah, I know. It was a wild day. So most of the players had gone in a little bit early because the concert's going on and everyone's paying attention to the concert. But he was out there the entire time. I think all the players had showered and like gone upstairs to get food. And he was still out there the whole time. So yeah, it was pretty wild.
That doesn't surprise me, sort of knowing Eric and sort of his commitment to the city and the fans and just how appreciative he is of everything. So obviously massive kudos to him on getting the Golden Glove, on getting the Steel Army Player of the Year. Went to a great guy. I think, Josh, you mentioned it last week. Hopefully we see him again next year. If he gets a payday and goes somewhere else, good on him. We'll talk about somebody who hopefully did the same thing and it didn't work out for him yesterday. But Steve, talk about Mini Kiss. Like,
I got nothing to say.
Oh, come on. There's so much to say about Mini Kiss. That was awesome.
They were there. They played. I didn't stick around and watch that.
You missed out. You missed out. It was hilarious. Like, one, I was not expecting much, but it was actually pretty fun. And like, they were really good. Two, what I really did not expect was for the national anthem to be sang by the lead singer of Mini Kiss. I'm just standing there like waiting for processions to begin, all that kind of stuff, and it's like, please rise for the national anthem sang by and I was like, who? And I looked up on the Jumbotron and they're in full face makeup and everything is the lead singer Mini Kiss. I was like, oh okay. So it was a very surreal moment. But yeah, the concert itself was a lot of fun. They actually had like the whole stage on a truck, like a trailer, and they just drove the truck out with the trailer, set up real fast, right in the middle of the field, and then played. And then that was it. And there was a light show. Like you could tell they were really getting into it. The stadium lights started flashing and all that kind of stuff. And they had beer carts out there, so it was like serving beer on the field with all the fans and players getting autographs and all that kind of stuff. So it was a party atmosphere. Definitely deserved as well.
I mean, you figure barring some crazy unforeseen something or another, that's likely going to be the last game at Highmark this year. So they figured blow it out, I'm sure. Let's get into the game so then we can start talking about playoffs, things like that. Lots of stuff happening on the field. Steve, give me a takeaway from this one. What did you see? What did you think?
Set pieces. I mean, both goals came off of set pieces. I think you tweeted it out, Mike, the video I got of the first goal and the celebration. But just, I mean, what a kick by Robbie on both goals, but on that one to find Eddie's head. Eddie finishing again. I mean, like that is an area where I feel like we've for years talked about the Hounds not doing as well as we'd like to see. And more recently, we've been seeing it a lot. And we've seen Eddie do like finish a few of those recently, which he's not a tall guy, but he's getting up in the box. And I mean, he can jump and get his head to those balls, and I love it. And Robbie's service has been pinpoint lately. So love it.
Yeah. Especially over the past few games, I meant to look back and see how many of the goals we've scored recently have come off of set pieces, but it feels like they really have kind of locked in. You mentioned, yes, I did. So you took the video, I then put it on Twitter, but not just Twitter. For those of you who've been paying attention, we are also now on TikTok and on YouTube and on Instagram. So the videos are literally everywhere. So you can pretty much find Mongols wherever it is that you are on social media. But yeah, I was like, my reaction was like, when did we get a set piece coach? Because it feels like for years we've been saying, do they even practice set pieces? They're just like throwing the ball in there, and it's worked out the past few weeks. So really, really good stuff.
Well, I think what I love about it is for so long we've talked about it as we've got these really tall center backs. Why are we not getting more set piece goals, right? And that's what I love seeing with Eddie. With it is he's not a center back and he's not really tall, but he's getting in there and he's scoring them, and so it's different and it's fantastic.
Yeah, agreed. Josh, give me another takeaway.
I mean, Jamali Waite, I think I just want to get into the whole weight of it all. It was nice to see him again. And the Steel Army was relentless, but he was having a good time. I know, obviously, he didn't want to lose, but he was kind of joking around with us. Like there was a moment when he started like he was way off his line. He was starting to step backwards, and the Steel Army was doing like left, right as he's walking. And he like stopped, and then kind of like went a little bit faster and like stopped. Like you could tell he just like messed with us. But at that point, he let us know that he could hear us and was listening to us. So it became even worse for him. We used to always do the chant, "Don't worry about a thing." With Jamali in the net, it's going to be all right. So after the first goal, that chant just came back with a whole new meaning, and pretty much kept going the whole half that he was in front of the Steel Army. So he took it though. Yeah. He was fun, and you could tell. I don't think he took it personally.
Yeah, totally felt bad for him, especially on that second goal. You could tell that he was really frustrated. It had his own player not put his head on it, I think Jamali would have caught it. Mm-hmm. I was thinking it would have been great, if Robbie just sort of scored off of that and sort of curled it in, but Jamali was right there.
Yeah,
and he's a guy that we had on the show multiple times last season. Great dude, love talking to him. I was really happy to see at the end of the game he had his arms around a bunch of the guys, and even during the game, there was a time that like Kizza ran past him. He gave him a little like bop on the head after he had the ball. So he was there for the guys in Pittsburgh for sure.
Yeah. And one of the things I noticed is like, I mean, as soon as the like teams like shook hands and walked away, like Hounds go to their huddle, he goes right to basically the half field line and starts working his way down, saying hi to fans. Like, top tier class act. We've seen players come back that haven't done that, and it really smacks of arrogance, I think. And then you've seen other players do that, and it's lovely to see that. And so to see him do that, he seemed like he was in a great mood to be back in Pittsburgh despite the outcome for them. But also knowing, right, like he already knows their fate, so have fun.
There wasn't like too much pressure on them as far as if we don't do this, we won't make the playoffs. Like, no, you guys were already eliminated. I am really sad that the shortest guy in their team gets a header goal, but not the shortest guy on our team, which is what I've been wishing for this whole time. But whatever. Good on you, Ricky Riz. I can't remember who it was. He's only 5'6". I just looked it up. 5'6", and Robbie Mertz is 5'7". So just saying.
I was sort of referencing Jamali earlier when I was saying about Dick. I think it's a case where we've talked about in the past where Lily just seems to find keepers and they turn into Golden Glove winners. And if you talk to any of these keepers, I shouldn't say any of them, multiple of these keepers that we've talked to in the past, they will attribute their Golden Glove not to their own ability, but to the fact that the entire team is playing in front of them and that they have the defense. And that's just the type of personality that you will find on the Hounds. But it is the case where if you win an award like that, your name is going to be tossed around a lot around the league in terms of going somewhere else to probably make more money than you're making here. And I think Jamali was one of those guys. Vitiello was one of those guys. And I don't begrudge any of them for leaving to go make more money, especially considering how much these guys make. So my hope is that, most of these guys that we signed this past season are on a 1-year contract with an option for another year. Hopefully the Hounds can pick up Dick's option. But if not, I don't begrudge him going somewhere else and making a ton of money too. I would love to see him here because, he seems like a great guy. He seems like he really enjoys the city. He enjoys being here. So that would be fantastic. Mm-hmm. But, we'll just sort of wait and see. I wouldn't be surprised if he's gone. I wouldn't be surprised if he stays. So
my take on it is, and this is not negative on any of those previous keepers. I mean, the past 3 starting keepers that we've had at the Hounds have all been excellent people, like great guys to talk to. But there's just something about Eric that I think just exudes the type of thing that makes a good Pittsburgh player a good Pittsburgh player, and a good person in Pittsburgh to be a player, right? Like he's just got something about his personality where there's just grittiness. There's like not taking himself too seriously, but still a really, really hard worker that if there was ever a keeper that Bob decides to lock down for a longer term stretch, more than a 1-on-1 thing, it's got to be Eric Dick for me. Because I really like him.
He kind of reminds me Joe Greenspan when we had Joe, like the way he kind of like a lot of fan favorites and that kind of stuff. But I will say something that Dick has done really well is also kind of got involved in like some charities and that kind of stuff in Pittsburgh and been much more vocal about that type of stuff. And also much more interactive with the fans. Like he's always out there retweeting and commenting and just, praising the fans. So yeah, definitely he's ingrained himself to us at least. So
and he obviously follows our social media if he's posting questions for Griffin.
True.
It's true. Yeah. This is where I'll drop a little plug. So it's looking like we will likely talk to Eddie Kizza this week. So if anybody has questions for Eddie, same sort of thing applies. If you want to record yourself on a selfie asking a question, you can email it to mongols3@gmail.com. We will put the email in maybe we'll put it in the comments. If not, I'll put out another video sort of requesting it. I'm leery to like put our email in plain text anywhere where it could just be scraped and people can just start spamming that account. But yeah, again, that's mongols3@gmail.com. Send us your video for Eddie. And maybe we'll play some videos for him. Maybe we won't. I think it's the first time we've talked to him. I want to sort of get inside his head and understand what caused this turnaround. And now he's just on fire. So really, really good stuff from him as well. Guys, I have a question for you because I am curious about this. So Tara Schumacher put in the comments, I honestly thought we would miss out on the playoffs this year. I was feeling pretty confident going into this one, and especially after we got the first goal after just a few minutes, I was like, this is done. Were you guys nervous at all going into this? Did you have any doubts that the team wouldn't pull this off, Steve?
I mean, it came down to, do we score or not? And despite the recent streak of scoring, I saw this as a game where we could play really well. And if El Paso decided that they just were going to put 10 men behind the ball and bunker, we would have trouble breaking it down. And they could score on a counter, and that would give us a lot of work to do. That is an area where I think we haven't seen the team be really successful, really consistently over the years under Bob. And so, I mean, I saw ways that it couldn't have gone this way. I felt like we knew what we wanted to do. The way we've been playing, it felt like we had every opportunity to come out and score first, and knew if that happened, that was just going to be great. And I mean, I was on the field just trying to get a couple of pictures, and I was about to walk off, and that foul happened. I was like, I got to stay. Like, this just feels like a moment. Pulled out the monopod, put the phone back on, and started recording, and rest is history. So, yeah. But to say, I mean, last night, no, I didn't feel super negative. There were a lot of pathways in, and that's changed from 4, 6, 8 weeks ago.
Yeah,
I felt more positive last night than I did a month ago or so.
Josh, you're our resident sort of worry work. Were you worried at all?
I was pacing some last night, but not a lot. I actually stayed over at the Steel Army section most of the nights. My only really, excursion was when I was trying to get a pretzel and the line was way too long. So I went to every single concession stand to see if there was shorter lines and other food fare that I would like. And then I finally decided, no, I'll just go back to the Annie Ann's stand. And it was a lot shorter by that time. So other than that, pretty much stayed in our section the whole time. I felt pretty confident about last night. Going into it, definitely. But a couple of weeks ago, no, I was right there with Tara. I kind of thought, I don't know, like this is not looking too great. And I think that Bob interview really got in my head, where he was kind of like, well, probably not happening. Like it's gonna be really hard for us to get into the playoffs. And I was like, well, Bob's saying that, like crap. But yeah, the tear they went on, and just felt like we couldn't lose there for a while. So I felt pretty confident about this game.
Yeah.
I think my feelings sort of echo what Chandler put in the chat. I wasn't super nervous. Even if El Paso parked the bus, I felt like a mistake would give us a good chance. Thanks, Chandler, for that. Yeah, I think I agree. I was feeling pretty good about it. I was surprised that we scored as early as we did, but it kind of felt like once one went in, I feel like this is it. I didn't see us slipping up. I know that there were moments where El Paso was getting more. Well, they had more possession throughout the entire game, which should be no surprise because that's just how we function. But they had a little bit more pressure towards the end of the first half, and then as the game sort of wore on. But it never really felt like to me anything that was too dangerous. So I felt pretty good about it. Guys, one thing that did kind of strike me is, do you think that this might be the last time that we see Kenny Forbes play at Highmark Stadium, Josh?
Oh, my heart. I think so. I don't know if he's going to announce his retirement anytime soon, but I don't know. I felt like this felt like a different type of year for him. Like it seemed like maybe this was it. I think he could definitely still play next year. Like if he wanted to, he could, but I don't know if he really wants to. And I do feel like there's a place for him in this organization going forward.
Oh, for sure.
Like I don't think him retiring from playing means that he's no longer a Hound. Like I could see him still being involved somehow. So I'll be curious to see what he does with the organization, because I don't know what accreditations and all that kind of stuff he has. So that will be another journey for him. But I wouldn't doubt we hear that he's doing something with the academy, and then hopefully making his way back up to assistant coach or something like that for the pro team.
Yeah, agree 1,000%. Steve, what are your thoughts on that?
I have a hard time thinking about him not being on the roster next year. Mainly because you can see that he still has quality. He can still play a lot. And especially in this recent stretch, he's been one of the first subs off the bench for Bob. And so I don't think that is just Bob trusting the history. I think that's Bob trusting the capacity that he sees still currently. That it's not, okay, I'm going to get Kenny in there because I know that in certain circumstances, even if he's not what he was, he can still make a game-breaking pass and open things up for us. It's when I want to pull somebody off, Kenny's one of my go-to guys, right? I just know he can't play 90 minutes week in and week out. And so I don't think I see that changing. I'll be surprised if Bob is not trying to convince him to stay as a player next year. I don't know what that means for Kenny, though. If he's just like, I've done what I've wanted done, like I've done what I wanted to do, and I can call it quits on a high note. But I also think that also depends on what happens in the next month, right? If the Hounds go on a deep playoff run, then I could see him easily retiring. If the playoffs don't go how we hope, I could see him being like, one more year. I want that one more shot at glory.
Yeah. And listen, I mean, it's also clear to me that Lily sees the value of some of these character guys, especially in the locker room. We've heard a number of players talk about how important somebody like Danny Rivera is, who we all love. Again, he saw his playing time sort of diminish a little bit this season, but in the locker room as being one of those welcoming guys that take guys under his wing and be like, this is what it's like to be a Hound. Those guys are super important. And so, yeah, I could totally see Lily trying to convince Kenny to stay for another year. But yeah, it'll be very interesting to see. It would just be a sad way to see him go and not give him a proper send off. So hopefully if it is, the Hounds still do something to recognize sort of his contribution to the team. And it'd be weird to see a Bob Lilly team without Kenny Forbes. So just something to think about. Guys, in terms of just sort of other players and positions, I thought somebody who really sort of stood out to me was Jackson Walty. He seemed to struggle to find his spot early in the season, but he was literally everywhere last night, cutting off balls, pressing the field. He's really turned into like that utility guy that I think a lot of us were really hoping he would become in the midfield, and seems to have stolen that spot from Sample. So now the midfield is the Mertz, Griffin, Walty. We'll see if that continues through the playoffs and whether it's just a situational thing, but really seems to have done a good job. Anything else that you guys saw or any other players that you want to talk about before we start talking about the playoff picture here a little bit?
I think it's really great to see Pierre get those late game minutes consistently lately. He was a guy that Bob said he really liked in the preseason. And so seeing him actually get that time makes me think he's going to be here next year, and he's going to play a bit more. I don't know what that means for the rest of the center backs. I mean, we know that both Pat and Alal are at the ends of their contracts, so hopefully we see both of those guys back and have 4 strong center backs that we can choose from. But excited to see what he can do if he gets a lot more time next year.
It's really funny that you mentioned him because he's one that we didn't see a ton of. And then they mentioned last night on the broadcast that he's played in 16 games this season. And I was like, really? Like, that feels like a lot.
Many?
Yeah. But whenever I would do the pre-gaming shows, especially with defenders, it was funny to me how many of them unprompted are like, oh, you should, like, Pierre, you should see him at practice. Like, dude is insane. And I'm just like, oh, okay. Like, I didn't ask that question, but thank you for sharing. So there's definitely something there that will be interesting to see if he hangs around for next season. Josh, any other takeaways from this one?
It's another, I think I said the same thing last week where it's really hard. I'm hard pressed to think of someone I'm not like happy with for this game.
Mm-hmm.
Like no one was like really making huge mistakes where I'm like, oh, come on, you're like going to cost us the game. So yeah, I thought everyone had a pretty decent performance. It's weird not to have, Jackson on the score sheet, but at the same time, I don't think he had a bad game. And that Blackstock disallowed goal was a sad one to see because that would have been fantastic. But overall, everyone had a good game and no complaints. Granted, this was against El Paso, so like I don't want to like overstate how well this team's doing when a lot of our opponents going down the stretch here have been subpar. Other than Charleston, who also did not put in their starting striker. So it's like we haven't had a huge good test other than Charleston, I would say.
Or their inherited center back.
Well, yeah. So it's one of those things where it's like, how good are we doing? Like, are we like, we're going to find out this playoffs now.
Yep.
So now this is, going to be a huge step up in competition than the last couple of games have been. So we will see.
I was bummed Danny Griffin didn't get the Mongols bump. So he's broken the streak. We'll have to see if we can start it back up again with Eddie Kizza, get him on the show. And Eddie's good for one this weekend, right? Like, we'll get the pump back and it'll be fine.
Yeah.
Griffin had a good game though.
He did have a good game. Yeah.
It doesn't mean you necessarily have to score if you get the Mongols bump.
Okay. All right. I wasn't sure what the rules are around that. Okay. So it's still the streak carries on. Good. I like it. I like it. Yeah. Any other thoughts before we talk about the playoffs?
Danny got fouled at some point, but I can't remember now if that was one of the 2 goals that it led to. But he got fouled in that general area at one point. So,
maybe.
Crap.
Maybe.
I'm not. Yeah. Like Danny Griffin wins a free kick in the attacking. Yeah, it was the 7th minute. So
yeah. Okay. See, so
there you go.
Without Danny, we wouldn't have gotten the chance to get that goal.
Yep.
We're good.
Exactly.
We're good.
So that's the bump.
Perfect. Well, guys, thanks to that win, we had mentioned in the prediction show that if we did win, then we were looking at 2 different teams than if we drew or lost. As soon as we won, we could turn our attention to sort of see what Tampa and Rhode Island did. Unfortunately, both of those did not play in our favor. So we ended up in 7th place, which means if we put the bracket up here on the screen for those of you who are watching live, this is how everything shakes off. Our focus is pretty much on the East, which is on the right side of this table. We are at the very bottom in 7th place, but as we've been talking, we will be facing Charleston Battery on Saturday at 6:30 p.m. in Charleston. Should we win that game, we will play the winner of Tampa and Detroit. And then from there, you're facing one of the 4 teams up above us, which is going to be Louisville versus North Carolina and Indy versus Rhode Island. So we will sort of see how things shake out from there. But as I said, we do get Charleston in the first round. As we alluded to there just a second ago, last time we played Charleston was just a few weeks ago. We did get the win at home, but they did not play the Golden Boot winner, their starting striker, Nick Marcanic, who, as we've discussed previously, he's already signed a deal to go play in Europe starting in January. So they know that he's gone. He's a really good player. So we're basically going to be having the Golden Boot up against the Golden Glove, which makes for really interesting storylines and sort of a really interesting way that this is going to play out. This is not going to be the same team that we saw a few weeks ago that we were able to sort of roll past at Highmark. It's going to be a very different game. Guys, I guess any sort of just initial thoughts on how it shook out? Are you happy with the Battery? Are you just happy that we're in? Steve, how are you feeling after this game is over and we kind of know our fate heading into next weekend?
I think I'm happy with the Battery. There's a part of me that thinks it would be great to go play Detroit, but I don't know that I want the stress of Detroit. I think there's a big difference between a Indy team that's coming off of a win versus an Indy team that's coming off of a loss. And for us to have played Indy, they would have had to have gotten the win, right? And so, so that just kind of, for me, changes how I feel about all these teams. I think Charleston, for me, feels like one of the best teams to play because they've been good most of the season, but we took it to them. Yeah, we've got a bigger threat to deal with next week than a couple weeks ago, but we know what to expect from them, and they seem to have cooled off a little bit from their best stints of the season. So I think it's a favorable matchup that we get them at a time where we're on a high and they're not on a high. And so, I mean, Justin talked about this, I think it was a couple weeks ago, that we've been just as good as them for the past 3+ months. So let's go out and beat them away. Yeah.
It will be interesting to see if, this is getting a little prediction-airy, but in the past, if a team has had a standout player, Lily has had this tendency to sort of try to man-mark that player. So do we see the insertion of a Danny Rivera to just stick to Marcanic like glue? We shall see. Josh, what were your thoughts on, just this game wrapping up, heading into the playoffs, knowing we got the Battery? How you feeling?
Yeah. As far as matchups go, I think maybe Indy would have been the better matchup. If we could have gotten that high up in the standings, we could have gotten Indy. Just because, coming off a loss in their last game, their form isn't the greatest. They've only had 2 wins in the last 5. So it would have been kind of a situation where I felt like the momentum's not in their favor. It would be in our favor. The second best would have been Detroit, in my opinion, just because I do think that game would have had a little bit more, oomph behind it, as far as the players who were there last year having that memory of getting knocked out of the playoffs and being able to do that to them, and just a little bit more of that meaning behind that game. And plus, it would have been a closer game, so we would have had a much more traveling support. So the Steel Army would be able to be there. So that was probably my number one originally, was hoping for Detroit. But if I'm being a little bit more logical about it, I think Indy would have been better than Detroit as far as chances to win that. But I mean, I'd rather have Charleston than Louisville. So if those are my other, 2 options, I'm glad we got 7th place instead of 8th place. So make North Carolina handle Louisville, and we get Charleston, a little bit of a rematch. I like the history there. The fact that it's 2 old guard teams, 2 black and yellow teams, a Golden Glove, Golden Boot. There is a lot of storylines there to play off of, and a lot of threads to pull there. So that's a lot of fun. But yeah, I'm happy about it. It's not my first choice, but it's definitely not the worst.
Yeah, I agree. I'm feeling pretty good about it. Like you said, lots of good storylines. We're going to see how things shake out over the course of the week for sure. But this will be a fun one. At this point, if you would have asked us in the middle of the season if this even would have been possible, we probably would have said no. We were openly debating about what happens if the Hounds don't make the playoffs? Is Lily still around? I don't know. And Lily sort of said after the game this week that he still doesn't think that we've hit our peak, like that we're still not playing to the best of our ability, which like
but Bob Lilly always says that. He said that after they won the Shield last year.
Yeah. I'm also like, Bob, you had an entire season with these guys. At some point it's on you, man. Like, come on. Like let's call it what it is. But no, I mean the announcers were saying it, we've been saying it, nobody wants to play the Hounds at this point. So we just need to keep riding this wave. And again, you could kind of see the guys were just oozing confidence in this game. And, Josh, your point, it was El Paso. But every game that's been building to this, you see that confidence growing and growing and growing. And so part of me is almost intrigued that if we're going to win this thing, it's going to almost have to entirely be on the road, most likely entirely be on the road, because that adds just one more chip where we're the underdog and you just have to go in and win. The pressure's all on us, and the pressure's been all on us for the past few months, and the guys have turned up. So yeah, it's going to be very interesting. And it's going to be a lot of fun for sure. Any final thoughts, guys, just about we're going to do like a full season wrap up and we'll get into all the details at a later time, but any sort of final thoughts on this one before we sort of close the book and start talking about just what everyone can expect this week?
I mean, I don't know if you guys noticed, but did you see Rhode Island beat Miami 8-1? They just demolished Miami. That was a beating. And like Legion won against Oakland. Or no, sorry. Yeah, it was Legion. Beat Oakland 5-0. So there's some, major scoring games last night. And yeah.
Listen, we always expect Indy to sort of drop off a ledge, especially as they get close to the playoffs. Indy was able to hold on. It was Birmingham that fell off a ledge. Like if you think early in the season how high Birmingham was, and a lot of people are predicting for them to cruise into the playoffs. The last 10 games of the season, they completely fell off a cliff. So I'd love to say that I'm disappointed about that, but I'm not. It's just, interesting to see. We will talk about that in more details later. Steve, any sort of last thoughts here before we?
Yeah, I mean, you talked about how this will have to be on the road. I mean, if I'm doing the math right, there's only 4 teams we could face at home, and 3 of those are in the West, and the other one is North Carolina. So we're talking about conference and USL championship like playoff games, right? Like. The last 2 are where we could potentially have a home game. So rounds 1, 2, and 3, we're on the road if we go that far. So start looking at your plane tickets, see what they cost, and try to get them early when you think the Hounds are going to win next week.
And if you can't get on a plane, just so you know, Steel Army is doing a watch party at the pitch on Butler on Saturday. Game is at 6, I believe, not 7. Or is it 6:30?
I think it's 6:30.
6:30, yeah. Game at 6:30, so show up to the pitch. We plan on having everyone there. I'll probably bring some merch. So should be fun.
Yeah.
And if you can't make it to the watch party at the pitch, we are going to try to do another live watch party like we did, where basically we just sort of have the stats up on the phone, so that you could be watching the game, you could be sharing what you're thinking within the comments. And there's just a whole conversation going on there. You can even do that while you're at the watch party at the pit. But we need to iron out those details. I just realized today that I have kids in multiple different places on Saturday night, which of course just like crushes me. But we're going to try to figure out what we can make happen there. But in addition to that, we've got a full slate of shows that we are going to be bringing you this week as we lead up to the game this weekend. We are trying to schedule another insider show with our friends in Charleston. We did one earlier this season to sort of pick their brains about what's going on. It'd be great to touch base with them again and sort of see how they're feeling down the stretch. As I mentioned, we're lining up a pre-gaming episode, hopefully with Eddie Kizza. So if you have questions for Eddie, again, record yourself on the selfie, send them over. They can be crazy. We had lots of ones about food for Danny Griffin, and Danny absolutely loved it. So don't hesitate to ask weird, fun, strange questions. The guys love it.
I want to comment on that. I gave him a hard
Yeah.
time about the no cheese after Tuesday, and his immediate response was like, "Oh yeah, like definitely." He's like, "But like I got Jamali to do that too," and he like points to the locker room.
So send us your questions. That's again mongols3@gmail.com. Just email them over, and we will try to work them in the show. We will obviously do our prediction show where I will sit down with Justin and we will share our thoughts as we get closer after we sort of hear, what people think in Charleston and what Kizza has to say. And then, as I mentioned, we're going to try to do the watch party again. So basically, as soon as the game goes live, you can join us on YouTube on your phone, and there will be some of us there talking about the game, sharing thoughts, and then also messaging. And so it's just sort of like an open message board about the game, and you can share your thoughts, check out some of the stats while the game's going and you're watching it there. So yeah, and as Liz mentioned in the email, it is the number 3, not spelled out THREE. So it's Mongols, the number 3@gmail.com. Thank you, Liz, for pointing that. Sorry guys, I saw somebody put something up in chat. What did you just share there, Steve?
I was trying to respond to Liz in chat, and for some reason it pulled up somebody else's comment.
Put it on screen.
Technology's hard.
Yeah, technology's hard. Once again, I mentioned on the prediction show I'm having microphone issues, so I apologize if it's echoey or I sound different. I'm just using my Pixel buds at this point, so apologies, everyone. Guys, any sort of closing thoughts on this one?
We made the playoffs.
Yeah.
Let's
Who knew?
go.
Yeah. It's still like hitting me a little bit, but yeah. Let's go is right. That's what we think. Let us know what you think. Thank you, everybody, for listening and watching and subscribing. Make sure you subscribe wherever it is that you get this. As I mentioned, we are kind of everywhere now on YouTube, on Instagram, on Twitter, on TikTok. Lots of content anywhere that you can think to find it. So please subscribe to us there. It absolutely helps with the algorithms, helps to spread the word to other Hounds fans who may not know we exist. They can discover it and they can be part of the conversation as well, which is, what we're kind of all about here. Otherwise, as I mentioned, lots of content coming at you this week. So we will be back talking about the Hounds with you very, very soon.
Later.
See ya.